Welcome to your very first skill check in First Berserker Kazan. My name is Pastor Gaines. I'm a Souls-like and Elden Ring creator and enjoyer, and I'm going to show you exactly what you need to know in order to beat this boss, as he can be incredibly difficult. So, let's go. Now, before we get started, there's a few things you need to know about Volbaino. Now, he has some incredibly staggered attacks, and because his attacks can clip out of the top of your view, it can be very hard to judge the distance and the timing of these downward strokes. However, lucky for us, he only has about 10 combos we need to know in phase 1, and yes, this is a 2-phase boss. And my encouragement here to you is that you just time your attacks correctly. What I mean by this is don't overcommit. In First Berserker Kazan, the combat is incredibly fun, but you can get caught up in your combos, which is where you're going to struggle against this boss. I'm going to show you in slow motion each one of his combos within phase 1 that you need to watch out for, and hopefully by the end of this video you will have a firm grasp on Volbaino in order to defeat him. Now, as you enter the arena, every single fight is going to remain the exact same. He's going to run up to you and do 2 downward strikes with his hammer. This can be very easily avoided, and it's very easily telegraphed. You can either dodge to the right or left, or as I do here, you can perfect parry and get a small amount of damage off immediately. He'll then back off a little bit, and his next attack that can be a little bit hard to get the timing of is going to be this horizontal slash with his hammer that goes straight across his body. If you perfect parry this, you can get off some damage, or you can also dodge to the left. I wouldn't recommend dodging to the right because his hammer strike may hit you at the end of your dodge, but I went ahead and just perfect parried this because after about the 20 attempts I had on this fight, I was pretty comfortable getting that parry timing down. Now for attack number 3, he's going to take his giant nail and slam it onto the ground. This hit me more times than not, but he does telegraph this decently well. I personally got stuck in all of my combos, as I said not to do at the beginning of this video, but he's going to pull the nail back over his head and he will slam it into the ground. Once again, very avoidable if you're looking for it and know what to look for, but after he slams this into the ground, he will then take his hammer and smash the top of the needle, causing an area of effect. My favorite thing to do here was just to completely back off, wait for him to finish doing this combo, and then run back in for some quick damage. Now the next combo you need to look out for in phase 1 is just the double slam onto the ground, and then he's going to pull both of his weapons back up and slam them down directly in front of him. This is very similar to the very first combination that we went over, and you perfect parry it the exact same way. You can either dodge to the right or left at any point in this combination, but I found that just getting the timings down correctly is the way that you want to do this because it will knock you out of position if you keep dodging around. Now we're about halfway through the combinations that he does in phase 1, at least the combinations that I face, but at this point you want to turn and start being incredibly aggressive, because as you get about 1/4 of his health down, he is going to transition over into the second part of phase 1, which is where he's going to climb up on top of that wall, jump off, and slam down on the ground. This for me was incredibly easy to time and just perfect parry because the attack is pretty straightforward. Now you can also dodge this if you wanted to. I dodged it in a few of my attempts, but overall I just found that the perfect parry was easier because it does stagger him back a little bit so you can get off some quick damage. Now what you just saw right there was him taking his flaming nail and slamming it on top of me, but if you perfect parry this, you will not get harmed. You will just take a tiny bit of flame buildup, as you see on the bottom left, but if you don't perfect parry this, you will take a ton of flame damage and start to get a debuff for the fight. Now this next combination in phase 1 is the last one that you really need to be aware of because it can do the most damage, and if you don't get your parries timed correctly, you will die at this attack in this fight. But he's going to telegraph the attack by pulling both weapons behind his back and then swinging twice in front of him with a staggered timing, so you need to double parry there at the beginning, and then he's going to start smashing his weapons down on the ground. He is going to hit a total of 6 times, and you can get a small amount of damage off each time you perfect parry, especially if you're using the spear, or you can actually choose to be safe and parry 6 times, at which point after he's done doing these 6 attacks, he will then line up for an unblockable move where he's going to bring both weapons in front of him a little bit slower. I just dodged to the right to have this miss me completely, but if you parry everything that he throws at you here, chances are you're going to get a lot of his stamina bar down in order to break his stance and get a lot of damage on him quickly, hopefully ushering you into phase 2. Now the rest of phase 1 is pretty much stuff that you have seen before. It's going to be all the different combinations that we have talked about, and he's just going to repeat them at his leisure. Now, the biggest problem with this fight is the fact that it's so long and you can make almost zero mistakes. As you can see here, I still have 4 healing stones, but there were many times in phase 1 where I went into phase 2 with none, and you really need those heals for the last phase of the fight. Now, phase 2 is fast approaching here, and typically it's going to happen right when you get him at or under half health. And the way you can see that he's going into phase 2 is he's going to lift the flaming nail up to his mouth and he's going to lick it, at which point you need to sprint over to the ladder in the back left of the room. He's going to slam this nail down into the ground, and then after a few seconds he's going to slam his hammer down on top of it, causing the entire arena to be covered in flame, and you can no longer fight on the bottom half. You will need to climb up that ladder, get to the next portion of this arena so you can engage him here for the last portion of the fight. All right, welcome to phase 2. At this point, your hands are probably incredibly sweaty. You're wondering how you've made it this far, and I am here to tell you that this is the portion of the fight where you need to be very, very careful. What I did for this portion of the fight was I tried to bait out the attacks that I knew I could dodge or that I could perfect parry, and I also gave him a lot of space. He's going to do a ton of moves in this portion of the arena that cause the arena to be unusable in certain spots, which we will go over in just a minute. However, the majority of all the attacks we've been over in phase 1, he is going to do in phase 2 with maybe a few variations. Also, I know by now you've seen him clack his weapons together like that, causing a ringing noise. If you're in front of him and you get hit by that, it will stun you for a second, but I find that's also very easy to perfect parry, which is why I didn't go over it, and you can also stand far away in order to have him miss completely. Now, there's one combination we do need to go over in phase 2 is where he's going to run at you from across the arena, and he's going to swing 3 times with a staggered fourth. This is very similar to a combination he did in phase 1, but the staggered fourth hit definitely got me a few times. It's pretty much a 1, 2, 3, then a fourth stagger, and it's going to be very easy to perfect parry that, but you do need to have your timing with that down correctly. Now, everything you've seen so far in phase 1, he does have the ability to do in phase 2, so you just need to be aware of that. But as of right now, he's just going to do the same combinations you've seen from phase 2 over and over again as well. Every once in a while, like I said, phase 1 combos will show up, but if you've made it this far, you're pretty close to killing this boss. Now, the Volbaino is a skill check in First Berserker Kazan. I think a lot of people are going to get stuck on this boss. I'm about 4 to 5 bosses into the game at this point, which I do have guides coming for, so definitely subscribe and stay tuned for those guides that should be hitting every single day. First Berserker Kazan is incredibly unforgiving when it comes to stamina management, as well as not perfect parrying the boss, and this is a game where you just have to spend the time going through and learning each boss's moveset, or it's going to be a huge struggle for you. Now, I have to admit, at this point in the fight, I have no health, he has no health, I have no healing. I'm panicking just a little bit, so I'm getting hit more times than I would like, but in the windows where you can be incredibly aggressive, definitely go in there, put as much damage off as you can, and then back off in order to bait out some of these other combinations that you are familiar with. I also want to say, I don't know why he really didn't do any of them in phase 2, but he does slam his hammer down like he does in phase 1 on top of his nail, and it causes part of the arena to be covered in flames in phase 2, and then eventually he will repeat the process that causes all the arena up there to become flames. You just need to jump down like I did, and then you can engage him in the next part of the arena. So that's going to be it for the Volbaino boss fight. I definitely want to know how many attempts it took you guys, or if you're still fighting this boss. As I said, he is a massive skill check. So I have a bunch more guides coming out for this game over the next few days. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification for all the information. And until next time, guys, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.